Welcome back to Insights at DDLynn Designs, a unique twist in the ancient art of wire. So today I'm going to show you how to use a bezel copper wire to wrap a cab. So over here you'll see the bezel wire, and then what I've done is I've captured it and then rolled it down. It's a very unique wire. I don't use it a lot, but I have used it to wrap, as you can see, this beautiful moonstone. I did this yesterday and I thought, you know what? I'm going to show people how to use bezel wire to wrap a cab. I also used half round, did some weaving for the bail. This one is not going to look like this because this is a very large moonstone. Big, thick moonstone. So the bezel wire that I'm using is from Rio Grande. I'm not plugging them. I would suspect hundreds of thousands of people order from them, but this is 1/8 inch copper bezel by 28, and it's a 1 pound spool. You'll probably never go through it unless you're a person that solders a lot. So anyways, just wanted to tell you where you can get that. Hopefully you can get less versus buying a spool. And then what I've done is I've measured my stone, and I'm using a teardrop, or also known as a pear shape. This is actually more pear-shaped. I would call this one the teardrop. And I've measured my gemstone, so you want to do that. So this is a 20 millimeter moonstone. And then I cut myself based on the size of my stone, which I won't be using all of this, but it's sufficient enough, 4 inches of my bezel wire. And then what I did is I'm going to be doing it with the point side down. So I found my center. And then, so I'm going to put this on my mat. Hopefully I'm in frame here. And so I approximately want my wraps, like I did on here, to be to the side. So on the sides, so my point is going to be open and I'm going to wrap here. I'm always going to give you a lot of detailed techniques, tips, and tricks to accelerate your journey in the ancient art of wire. So let's get started. So the other thing that you're going to want to do is take into consideration the size of your stone. So because I'm going to be using my core wires, which I'm going to be using a 20 gauge square. You can use round, but I like the look of the square better on this particular design, and it's also very helpful when doing your wraps with your half round wire. You can use weaving wire, but I find that the half round holds up a lot better. On this one, due to the size of the stone, I used a 20 gauge half round, okay? So you wanna measure your stone. So I cut myself, and also, by the way, on this one, I used 4 square wires. So I used 4 20 gauge square. Because of the size of this stone and it being much smaller, even though the girth is relatively high, this bezel wire is going to cover the sides well. So I'm only going to need 3 wires if you consider this a wire in total. So I cut myself based on the size of my cab, being a 20 millimeter cab in length, 7 inches of 20 gauge square, and I cut 2 pieces and I mark the middle. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to wrap our bezel wire with our 20 gauge. And you want to make sure, so here's another tip. If you're new to working with square wire, there are 4 sides. And there's a definitive flat side and an edge. And sometimes it's hard to see, so don't worry about that. But what you don't want is it not being flush with the other wire. So I'm going to get myself, and I'm going to be using, because of the size of this stone and being so much smaller, I'm going to use a 22 gauge half round, and I'm not going to need a lot. So I'm just going to go ahead, just for the sake of using this twice, I'm going to cut myself 6 inches. I won't need all that. So I'm going to be using 20 gauge wire. And then what you might want to do is you might want to tape your wires together So what you're going to do is you're going to line up your outside core wires, whether you're using square or round, make sure that you find center. And again, these marks on the side are 1/4 inch away. Those are just a gauge. I'm going to be sliding the half round wire around. And all I'm going to do is just tape off my ends so that I have more control over my wire. So here's what we have. So I'm going to go ahead and start to wrap. I'm going to make a little hook. And if you haven't used half round wire before, it's flat on one side and slightly domed on the other. And all they did was cut a piece of wire in half. So I'm going to go ahead and just wrap. Now you want to make sure that when you're wrapping, that you don't let your outside core wires ride up on your bezel wire, okay? So I'm gonna push this down with my hand first. I'm giving memory to the wire, and it's gonna have a tendency to sink down in the middle because the square wire is thicker than the bezel wire. So don't worry about that. That's not gonna be a big deal. And I'm gonna make myself either 3 or 4 wraps. I wanna see how it's going to sit next to my stone and how much space it's going to take up. So let's see, this is gonna sit on the side. And I think I'll do 4. I might change my mind and pull them out. And I'm pushing that down with my thumb. And then when I cut it off, I don't want the tail of my half round to meet the outside core square wire because I don't want it to lift up. So I'm gonna pull it down and then I'm gonna roll back to where I wanna cut it. And that's also going to cinch the wire down. And then I'm just gonna come up underneath it. Now 22 gauge half round wire is very soft. You gotta remember it was 22 gauges, so they cut it in half. And then I'm just gonna rock this one in. And I'm using the outside square wire as a gauge for where I wanna roll back. And it doesn't have to be exact, but it also cinches that wire down pretty good for you. There's a lot of different techniques that are used with half round wire, and you just have to find the one that works for you. So we're gonna be able to move these wires up and down, and sorry about the big arm there. It's cold here today. So I'm not sure, you know, again, where these are gonna line up until I set my stone. So I'm just being very gentle about tapping these down. I don't wanna cave them in the middle. And I'm trying to get better at speeding up my videos, so I'm gonna do this side and I'll be right back. So I've wrapped both sides, and now I'm going to bend my, if you're using if you're going to be wrapping the point of a gemstone, I'm going to make a very sharp bend in the wire. And you can see how this will continue to slide up and down. We'll be dealing with that off and on throughout wrapping the stone. So I'm gonna get my flat nose. Which ones do I want to use? Sorry about my arm in there. Those are way too thick. Oh yeah, I forgot about those pliers. I bought a new pair of pliers and for shaping. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my flat nose. I'm going to slide this back out of my way a little bit so I can get in there. And on the mark, I'm going to bend this in a V. And I'm going to use my thumb, and I'm holding very firmly, and I'm going to just bring that up. Then I'm going to stop and see how my stone is going to set in there. Now here's another thing. Because we're using the bezel wire, you will find that your wire, your outside core wire, might slip down. Just push it back. It's really not a big deal. You can also get your pliers in here and just line it up. So let's see how my stone is fitting in there and if that's where I want my half round wraps to sit. And that looks pretty good to me. I know this tape is a huge annoyance. So I want to make sure that's squared up pretty good. I think I'm going to use this as my front. Yeah. So you can either do this on the table or do it in the air, whatever works for you the best. I'm again looking at those wraps. They'll be moving around anyway. So let's do this. And you can also tape your stone down if you find that you're having difficulty wrapping it. Okay, let's move these little tapes out of the way. So like any cab that we're wrapping, we're just going to wrap this around it. And I think I am going to slide those wraps down. So to make my life a little bit easier, I'm going to curve these in. All right. And you can see, because of how small this stone is, why I only use 2 core wires, because the bezel wire is sitting above the stone. So I'm just going to wrap this. Get my stone back in there. This tape is very annoying for me right now. And then I'm going to cross them over. And don't worry if you're using a point, meaning a pointed stone, a teardrop, if you have a gap on the bottom, because we can actually use that to our advantage. Now you're going to want to have a gap on top. And we're going to be removing, and you can see how these slide around in here. We're going to be removing this tape here shortly. And then we're going to wrap the sides. So I'm just lining it up. Push that wrap up a little bit. Those wraps are going to move around quite a bit on us until we really secure everything. Okay. So now, and you're going to see that your wires, because of this because of this bezel wire, they're going to have a tendency to want to cross over. So I'm going to slide my tape up. Might be able to get away with that. And let's see if I can slide this one up. You can see how it's crossing over back here, so you want to be very mindful of that until we cut that bezel wire off. Okay. All right, let's get my stone back in there. It's a lot of fiddling until we get the wraps up on top. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to wrap the sides here as we did down here, and I'm going to do 4 wraps, and we'll be moving those around as well. So I'm going to go ahead and pop my stone out and get my half round wire, and as we did before, we're going to wrap the sides. So I'm going to do that, and I'll be right back. So I've wrapped the sides, and we're going to be moving these around again. I'm just looking at approximately where I think I might want them, but that could change. So you might find it difficult, so you might want to really tape down Sorry about the 3 tapes there. You might really want to tape these down even better. This painter's tape is very light, so it tends to move a little bit more. But we want gap space on the top. So I'm just going to squeeze these together a little bit, cross them over, and my tape is actually in my way there. Just to see much gap space I want to leave in there. So that looks pretty good to me. So you have 2 options. You can mark your wire where you want to bend it back, or you can just eye it and roll it over. So let's see what we got going here. So I'm going to go ahead and take this out, and right where the bend is, I'm just going to gently, and you want to watch, push this back because it's not 4 wires together. It's that bezel wire, and then over here, I'm going to do the same thing, and I can see that they're wanting to cross over that bezel wire because they're not firmly taped down. And then I'll line everything up. As I mentioned, your wraps are going to move a lot. Okay, so let's see what we got here. So I'm just going to pull those together. That looks pretty good to me. And then I'm going to secure the bail. And I might just do a temporary tie until I decide on what it is that I want to do. So let me just clean these up so they're even. I don't want to use that. Want to use, where is that new plier? Is this one gonna work? I think so. Okay, so now I'm going to use half round wire again. I'm not liking the bend up here. All right, so I'm going to use half round wire again. I'm just going to cut myself. Oh, I'm not sure what I'm doing here, you guys, meaning as far as what design I want to make. So I'm going to actually cut myself about 13 inches. And I may or may not continue with what I'm thinking. If you've been following me for a while, then you know that I change as I go, and it's still bugging me, that right there. Okay, I'm gonna have to slide this up a little bit if I can. Doesn't look like I can. So let's do this. I'm gonna open this up. You can see my process. Everyone has their own unique techniques. That's actually tearing off of there. So I'm gonna get another piece of tape, and I'm going to just wrap it up here. And I think I'm going to get a new piece of tape for here too. The creative process for each of us is different. Even though we might use similar techniques, it's still how each of us does it. So there is no, golden rule. Okay, I feel much better about that now. It was bugging me to know tomorrow. So I'm going to wrap my bail, and I'm putting my wire in the middle, and I'm going to leave a 3-inch tail, and then I'm going to swing it around, and I'm going to secure the bail. You want to keep these lined up. Feel something catching over here. All right, let me take a look at that. We've got this wire coming around the back. Oh, you guys, if I was out of frame, I'm so sorry. I was just cinching up that half round down there, and I'm still deciding on these wraps here. If I want them to sit up there or come down a little bit lower. So let's put our stone back in there. And I am going to separate these. I think I do want these down a little bit more. Yeah. Because we're going to secure the back here in just a moment. So to secure this wire here, I'm going to show you a really cool technique. I don't know, we like to use the word trick and stuff, but it's really not a trick, it's a technique. I want my wire in the front here. So this wire right here that I brought through the middle, I want it to be equal on both sides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to twist my half round because the flat side is coming up and I want it to go in the opposite direction. So I'm going to grab it very closely and I'm going to twist it. And then I'm going to bring it back through the bail where that gap space is. And I'm leaving my stone in there for leverage, so I have something to hold on to. So that they both so in the front, instead of it being a single wire, it's 2 wraps in the front. So it just creates some nice symmetry. So I'm going to slide all of this down. All right, that's looking pretty good. So now I'm going to teach you another cool little tip. I'm going to take my tape off, and I might be putting it back on. And I'm going to tighten these wires, my square wires, around my stone a little bit more. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to hold very firmly at the neck and the body of the stone, and I'm pulling up on this wire, these core square wires here, and I'm tightening them around my stone. And I could really feel my stone get really good and snug in there. Now, as I mentioned, these wraps will keep moving. So I'm going to come around the back. And we're going to separate those out. I'm not sure if I'm going to use this tail wire here, so I'm leaving it for right now. Okay, so now you can either pop your stone out. That feels pretty good. It's not falling out of there. Or leave it in. I'm going to pop mine out so that I can set the back. And you're going to hold firmly, and you're going to come down here where your wraps are, and you want to make sure that your wraps are equal. And you're going to, just like you do when you're wrapping any cab, you're going to push that wire in and try not to compromise your bezel wire. And we'll be making adjustments as we go. I just want to get my stone back in there to capture it. You want to also check your half round as we start bending and stretching and shaping our wires. It can lift up sometimes. So I'm going to pop the stone in there. There we go. Just felt it pop in. And then I'm going to go ahead. This one's riding over a little bit. And bring this wrap in so that it's more center. It's a little fiddly because you don't have, like normal when you're wrapping a cab, you don't have the normal wires, you know, if that makes any sense. I sure hope I'm making sense. If I'm not, well, I'm sorry. I'm trying to do the best that I can here explaining this. Okay, that's great. So now I'm going to separate these out. I want to make sure everything's centered the best that I can, and I'm going to pull my bezel wire here on the side down. And then I'm going to separate out the back wires because I'm going to do my bail with the front wires. So let's see, I want to make sure, I'm getting a little confused here looking at how this is all lining up. All right, I'm going to pull these together and kind of line everything up so I can see that I'm balanced and I have symmetry, and I'm not. So I'm going to swing now that that's in the way. Just making adjustments so I have center. With all these wires going in all sorts of directions, it can be a little confusing. Okay, we're going to come around one more time with our half round wire till we come to the front. And then I'm going to move this towards me just so I have some working room. And move these back a little bit and move those down. So now I'm going to wrap my bail. And if I don't have enough half round, I'll just bring some in because I can see that I probably don't. I don't want a big bail. You can, it's just personal preference. And I'm turning the body of the frame and holding some tension. You want to keep your flat side down on the half round as I'm spinning it around. I'm doing this slowly so that you can see as I'm spinning it around my bail. And I don't think I'm going to do a 1-inch bail, which means I'd be weaving up 1 inch, which would give me half an inch. I think I'm going to do a little bit shy of that. I have to tell you, when I first started working with half round was when I very much began 4.5 years ago. And I'm twisting my half round here, so you got to watch. And I tell you, it was not an easy thing for me to master this half round wire, especially this 22 gauge, because it will twist so easy on you until you have an understanding of the wire, which just comes from practice. So be patient with yourself. I might have enough wire, gang. I think I cut 13 to 14 inches. Let me see how long this is. It's almost 3/4 of an inch. And I think that will be a really good size. Now I'm already thinking about, do I want to bring my bale forward or do I want to bring it back? Meaning I could roll it this way and tuck it under, or roll it back and tuck it under. So let's see how long we've got here. We're at 3/4 of an inch exactly. So I'm just going to use this remaining half round. And since I'm going to be rolling it back, I'm going to cut it in the back. Okay, so now I'm going to gently tap down on my half round. It's a very soft wire, so you don't want to squeeze super hard or you'll smash it. So I'm just going up and down with equal pressure. Then I'm going to go down the sides and I'm going to line up my bale. Get these guys out of the way. So I'm really going to stretch them back. So I want to show you another tip. So to feed your wires through, if you pre-bend these, it will make it a little bit easier. So I'm just going to bend these down. And then I'm going to pull my bale towards me. I'll line up my legs there. And I'm just going to even those up so that they go through equally. And I'm going to use my finger. So a rule of thumb, but it's not, you know, a golden rule. It's what I do. When you're making a bale, you lose length when you're bending your bale into the curve, trying to make that loop. So always come below center. So if I'm looking at this and this would be approximately center, I'm going to come a little bit lower than center. Then I'm going to start to feed this back. Make sure I keep it lined up. There we go. And I'm going to feed it through this gap. So I'm going to bend my wires in a little bit more just to give myself an advantage. Then I'm just going to push. As I'm pushing, I'm rolling that bale forward. So I'm pushing on it, squeezing it in at the same time, and rolling it forward. And that's the perfect size for this size of a stone. I didn't want this humongous, humongous bale. So now we're going to pull these down. And I'm debating on how I want to capture these this time. On this one, I rolled them flat. And then I pushed them in. So what I did is I just rolled the tip of it after I cut the length of it and pushed them in. And on this, I'm debating on whether or not I want these little loops up here. And then I can roll these up and over after I capture them with my core wires. So I'm looking at these little loops here and I'm thinking, well, I could spread these apart, which I'm going to do right now. And you want to watch your wraps up here, okay? And I'm stinking thinking, gang, and I'm gonna push these in even more. And I'm using my fingernail because it's a very soft wire. Want them to dent in and get very, very close. So I'm just putting pressure on it because I'm going to secure them with these bail wires. So I'm just really squeezing them in. Did you see that side come in there? Oh, I like that so much better. Just a subtle little loop. It almost has like a crown effect. So I'm not sure I'm going to use this wire back here. I'm going to leave it for a little bit and then decide. So now I need to have space to bring these wires around. I'm still thinking decoratively what I want to do. I might just cut them off. I don't know. This is how I work. I just design and create as I go. So just want to make sure everything's center. Nothing's pitched off. Flatten that down in there. So I'm thinking I'm going to do that. I'm just trying to think that if I use these to create more decorative design, if I'm going to have enough room to get them through the opening in where we have our bail. So I'm just walking you through my creative process, okay? Or I could also bring them around and then connect them on the back here, because I've got these two wires here where I could open up and hide them, tuck them, or weave them in. So it's really just me thinking out loud and going through my own process of what I'm going to do. So I'm going to separate these more. And I'm going to move these up because they're now in my way in that direction. And I want to come up underneath my wraps here. I don't want to cross over them. You can. So I'm going to straighten these out, and I need a bigger, girthier plier so I can achieve what I'm looking at, what it is that I want to do. And I do things relatively slowly because symmetry is really important to me. And not in all my designs. I love organic, and so I'm pushing those wires up. I'm really pushing them up. So let me see how this is setting up. These wires in the back make me think that it's off kilter, and it's actually the wires in the back that are off kilter, not my pendant. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to squeeze these in even more. Just want them down a little bit more. That's going to be really cute. And I might end up going over these wraps too, you guys, as I'm looking at this, because I've got to bring this wire around the back. So you want to make sure that you're on your flat side. And I'm going to push. I'm just rolling that wire over a little bit because I can see that it's twisting a little. So I want to keep it on a really flat side. And I'm pushing it around to the back. And this one looks pretty flat to me, but I'm just going to double check. I want to roll it out a little bit. So the flat side is really up, and I'm holding very firmly and slowly pushing it around to the back. So this is what we have. This is going to be really pretty. This is the first time I've done this technique. Normally I always flatten it, that bezel wire, or roll it. But I like how it ended up here. It just happened. That's what happens to me. So I'm looking to see if we have enough room back here, and we do. I really want to push these up as high as I can get them. And then to determine how much wire I need to cut, I'm just going to fold one over so I can see, because often if the wire is really, really long, we can't really see how much we're going to need, because I'm going to need to bend this up towards the bell neck to tuck it inside that little gap space there. And I can already see that I'm not going to have any additional space to tuck these in through the bail, so I'm already thinking about what I want to do that. So I'm going to take off less than what I need until I pre-shape my wire. I'm just cutting right about there. And I'm going to hold very firmly, and I'm going to bend my wire, just kind of like pre-shape it to get an idea of how much length I'm going to need. So I can see that that's too long. So it's better to take a little bit off at a time than if you take too much. Well, you know how it goes. You can't put it back on. So I'm looking at that, and I'm already calculating in my head how it's going to be wrapping inside of there, and it's going to connect to the back of these wraps. So I'm going to get my bent nose just to start pre-shaping where I want this to go. But I'm not going to push it in too much because I might need to cut a little bit off, and I do. I can see that it's hitting this bail wire here. So that's why I did that. So that looks good. So now I'm going to tuck it in. And that's perfect. Well, whatever perfect is, right? So I'm going to do the same thing over here. You always want to turn your work around and make sure that you're maintaining your symmetry, if that is what you're going for. So I'm going to cut this, and I'm going to leave more than what I need. Okay. I'm going to pitch this up just a little bit, and then I'm going to pre-shape it. I'm going to roll that tip down, so I'm telling the wire where I want it to go. And then I'm going to tuck it in. That's great. Okay. I don't think I'm going to use this, so I'm probably going to snap it off. So let's come around to the front, make sure everything's lined up equally. Okay. I think I can see that I'm off on an angle, so I'm just pitching my bail back a little bit to the side. Isn't that going to be pretty, you guys? It's almost got a little bit of an array, not a, what do you call that? Oh, what do they call that? Oh, I can't think of the name. It's a particular design in the Middle East. Okay, I'm going to snap this half round. I'm not going to use it. So I'm just going to wiggle jiggle until I snap it off. And I save all my wire. I have envelopes, by the way, and I mark all my envelopes with the gauge of the wire, and I throw all my scrap in, with the exception of that, because I can't do anything with it. All right, so I'm stinking thinking, and I want to tuck that in just a little bit better there. But isn't that cool? I just think that bezel wire is so cool. I never saw anyone use bezel wire in a cabochon wrap, so I'd really appreciate that you credit my design. I had bought it wanting to play with some solder work. I used to do stained glass, and I just came up with this. I thought, how can I use this? And it was a little bit of trial and error. Okay, I am debating on whether or not I want to roll these up yet, or I want to continue with my design first. And so I'm debating on that. I'm looking at these wires back here, and this is just my creative process, and I'm thinking about bringing them up and over and around. And I can either loop them in the front or up and over and around to the back and connect them to these back wires here. I don't know. I'm still thinking about it. So, want them really, really clean. It's going to cover this a little bit if I do that. The other option is if you like the way it's looking, you can just cut these and wrap them around the back of your bale. Now the other option that I'm looking at is that I could wrap them over these. This is all coming to me as I'm looking at it, but this one is not inside enough. Let's see if I can move that in. I just saw this. They're kind of crossing over in here, and I'm not sure that will line up evenly, even though I just saw a really cool thing I could do. I don't know if that will work, because it looks like they're not going to set even. I can't get this one lined up to where it's completely perfect. Let's see if I can do it. I have this idea in my head, so you might want to pause here and wait to see if I change this up. I just don't think it's going to sit center unless I can manipulate that wire enough. So here's what I'm thinking. I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm going to follow this curve here on that bezel wire. Now I'm going to see if I can do it on this one because it's not lining up perfectly in the back. I think I'm going to be able to do it. Okay, I'm going to see what this looks like. If I don't like it, I'm going to change it. You should see, or you wouldn't know, but I made so many changes on this design until I just had to stop. And I think anybody that's been doing this for a while completely understands that we get a super critical eye. So I'm going to start pushing this in with my fingernail. Not sure I like that, but I'm going to give it a go. So I'm going to swing this wire out. Sometimes we want to go in the opposite direction of where we intend the wire to go, which is going to give us the room that we need to create that space. So I'm debating here. It's kind of a trippy look, huh? So I'm going to tuck these in by squeezing them. And then I'm going to really push in here. I might be moving these around to the back. You're just going with me, folks. Not sure I like that. Let's see what we got going here. This one needs to go in a little bit more. It's definitely different. So I think what I'm going to do is move these back because I just saw that I needed to set that bezel wire. And I might be changing the shape or just cutting them out. I haven't decided yet. So I'm going to equal out my bezel wires here, meaning making sure they're the same length. So I'm going to pull them away. And I should have done this a while ago, and I can see that they're not. So I'm going to cut this one. What do I got going on there? Yeah, I'm not sure I'm digging that, you guys. I kind of liked it just with the bezel wire. You're probably thinking the same thing, right? Give me your feedback. By the way, please give me your comments, you guys, and feedback. I'm just going to roll these up. So I'm going to be using a needle nose. And I'm going to make a very crisp bend. I'm working right off the tip of that. Very, very crisp bend. And you can't leave it like this. It's too soft. It would be really cute, but it won't maintain its shape because this wire is so, so soft. So I'm going to now bend it in even more. And the same here. I'm working off that tip. And then I'm going to flatten it. That's so cute. Now that should be okay. But I'm going to roll it in a little bit more. I'm feeling like I need to secure that more. So let's see. That feels pretty good, but I'm still not sure. So I'm not digging this idea back here. So this is how I work. So I'm thinking of either cutting them off I also saw something else where I could add an additional bail. So I could actually bring these up to where they meet together. This is kind of cool that I'm doing this. I normally don't do this where you guys are going through the entire creative process with me. But here's what I'm thinking. If I bring these up and make one more bail, I'm going to give it a go. You're going to see how I work, really work. So I'm going to start folding this up. Same thing here. And then I'm going to squeeze them in. Cool. And I'm really going to squeeze them in because I'm going to drop something else in there. I'll tell you what I'm thinking in a minute. You want to turn your work around all the time to make sure you're maintaining symmetry. And I even want that to be tighter. So I'm going to hold very firmly and squeeze that in even more. Oh, I'm seeing so many things, you guys. This is how I work. I start seeing stuff and I'm like, ooh, that's cool. Let's try that. And I'm just going to clean that up in there and center those wires up because they're crossing over each other inside of the bail. So I want that even tighter. And I'm going to roll these up even more. I'm feeling like they're just a wee bit insecure, and we don't want that. So I'll probably take those all the way up here. Yep. Okay, so I'm going to come underneath this right here, right at the X, holding very firmly and squeeze very quickly together. Good, that's what I wanted. Okay, yay. Let me move this one out just a little bit. Then I'm going to straighten these legs out. pull them together. You can see that this side needs to come out a little bit more. It's the bend in this wire. It's a little bit too sharp. Okay, you're gonna see what I'm thinking here now, hopefully. But instead of putting the chain through here, we're gonna put it through here. I'm going to make another bail. Just wanna make sure everything's lining up. Well, this is taking a lot longer than I anticipated it to be. I'm always trying to, I guess I shouldn't worry about that. You can watch it or not, right? I'm really picky, can you tell? I think I'm not the only one that is that way in this business. So I need a little bit more of an edge. Not here. Need to soften that edge a little bit. Sharpen that one. There we go. So now I'm going to get some half round wire. And this time I'm going to use 20 gauge because I want a good strong bail. Make sure it's not twisted. Let me tell you what I cut, and I just do things on the fly. A little shy of 7 inches. I won't be using all of that. So this is my front. And I'm going to wrap this. And I'm debating, I'm seeing so many things now. Instead of rolling this around the back, I'm also debating about rolling it in the front. I'm seeing so many things. I mean, you can keep going and going and going. And bringing, as I roll, imagine this coming over the top of this bail and then making decorative wires, but I'll do that another time. So at this point, you could have just cut these and tucked them in the back or created any design that you wanted. So I'm gonna really tighten those up and I'm gonna roll it in the back. I've decided. So let's give these a little tap down. Okay. And if you haven't worked with a thicker gauge half round, you will definitively feel the difference. So I'm going to be wrapping this over and around the back and probably maybe connecting it through this bail. I'm not sure yet. It has to be strong enough and secure enough, and I don't need that much. So with the 20 gauge half round, you can really push down on it because it's a much thicker wire. And interestingly enough, it maintains its position, meaning from one wrap to the other, better than the very thin 22 gauge that will have a tendency to separate more. So I'm looking at that, and I'm thinking if I make my loop, if that's going to be enough. So this is first for me, folks. So I just need to get my chain through there. Let's see what size I want to use. My goal is just to make a loop, but then I just had this other idea, and I've done this on a lot of wraps. When I add or create additional bales. And I think I'm going to do that. So I can take some of these out if it's too many, but I'm just going to wrap it a little bit more. So what I am going to do is I'm going to get my 6-step bale making pliers here. And I'm thinking I'm going to use the number 3. And I'm coming very close to where I started this, okay? I need to cut this. Well, I might be able to use it. I'm always thinking that. Can I use that? Can I use that? I don't know. What if I want to use it? Just harder to get in there and cut it off. I'm going to go ahead and cut it off. Yeah, okay. So I'm wondering now if I want to use flat. If I want to use a flat nose. You guys are really getting a clue on my creative process. Versus round. And I'm thinking, or I'm thinking about the shape that I want the inside of my bell to be. A chain nose. I think I'm going to do a chain nose. Yep. Okay, I'm going to swing it around the back. Here we go. And it definitely stretched out my wire. So I'm going to show you a cool trick. You can push them up, and then that hides the little gap that happens when we're using half round. And I think that's going to be good. So we have a double bale, and that's where the chain is going to go through. So I'm going to use this half round here to connect it to the inside of the bale. This is a trip. It's pretty cool. That's how stuff happens for me. I just see it and do it, right? And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But how are we going to learn if we don't try? Really want your feedback on this, you guys, if it just confused the dickens out of you. Let's see. I'm going to tighten that up. I got to get around the other way. I'm going to go through again. There we go. Really felt that snug in that time. That's a good snug bale. Good and snug. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift up on these legs. And hopefully I have enough wire here, and I do. To bring it around twice to secure it, and then I'm going to cut it underneath. And then we'll cut these off and hide them somewhere. We're going to do something with them. And we still have to pull these up. I don't think they're secure enough. You know what? I'm going to move these down. Here's another tip. I'm rolling them forward, and I'll create a little gap back here. All right, so we need to get rid of these guys. So I'm going to bring them down and I'm going to roll them in. So I'm going to separate them out. Now I'm looking how I could bring these around front again. It's crazy wrap. It's just a crazy, crazy wrap. And I want to really bring them down. So I'm just using my thumb now. See, let me tell you what I'm thinking now. I'm thinking about bringing these around to the front and creating a cute little curl, lifting up on this wire here and connecting them. But I think that's going to be a bit much at this point, although what's wrong with a bit much? Some people like it. To me, this is a bit much. So if I'm going to connect them back here, I'm just going to roll them in. So I really need, and I seldom, by the way, ever work with chain nose anymore. I'm going to really separate them out so I can roll them in. Yeah. Or I could also bring them around front and tuck them through that last gap space there. But that is quite the tight squeeze. So what I was thinking is rolling them around and tucking them in here, but I'm not sure because that's such a narrow space in here that I'd have enough room for both wires. Could certainly try it, but that would be kind of cool in all honesty. Let me see. You are definitely going through my creative process with me on this one. Let me see if I can do it. If I angle it enough, maybe. I'm going to try. If I can't, then I'll move it around the back. I don't need that much, but I'm just looking to see how much I'm going to need. Just need to bend that tip in there. Just a little bit. So I might be able to get away with this, you guys. I'm going to roll it because I'm giving it memory. And then I'm going to bring this one around. Well, this is just morphing into so many different things. Okay, let's see if I can get away with it. I'm going to roll that tip. I think I can, y'all. I think I can. Okay, which pliers do I want to use? I'm not sure I want to use those other ones yet. Want to really push it down in there. It's working. Yay. Okay, now let me get my bent nose. Oh, that's great. I can't wait to hear what y'all think of this. But it worked out great. If I could draw, I would draw everything that I've ever made. Unfortunately, I can't. So I'm going to do some cleanup here. And as you can see, we are almost done. I'm going to roll up those bezel wires. Just had a couple of dings in there and didn't like looking at them. So I'm going to roll these up. I'm going to get my needle nose and I'm going to fold them forward again. That's going to work. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to flatten these into themselves like that. And the same thing here. Let's line them up. I want to really tuck them underneath this 20 gauge square wire on the outside. There we go. I could feel that push in. And there we have it, ladies and gents. Our beautiful little bezel wrapped cab. Now, if you want, my stone is not going to pop out the front, so I want to give you some more tips. If you want, and I need to center this. This is in there so tight, but if you wanted to and you felt uncomfortable, you can lift up on this wire here. Mine is so tight, and you can make your little bends down on the bottom here. So I really look forward to getting your feedback and tell me what you think and if you pulled it off. And here are our beautiful bezel wrapped cabs. Thank you everyone for being a wonderful part of this magical ancient art of wire community. I wish for all of you all that you wish for yourselves. I truly do. Have a wonderful, magical wire wrap day. Bye for now.